Collide with the biggest stars in dance. As Ultra Music Festival Miami comes to Sirius XM with performances from David Guetta, Swedish House Mafia, Tiesto, and more. Ultra Music Festival 2023 live around the weekend, starting Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 Pacific on UMF Radio, Channel 52, and from the SXM app.
Get the SiriusXM app and listen on your phone when you get out of the car. Anywhere you take your phone, you can take Howard Stern, NFL Radio, and commercial-free music channels from nearly every genre. You never have to miss your favorite SiriusXM programs or commercial-free music. Find the SiriusXM app in the App Store or call 844-711-8800 or visit SiriusXM.com/app to find out more.
Netflix is a Joke Radio is on SiriusXM. Wall-to-wall comedy clips from Netflix's exclusive and unparalleled library of top comedy specials. Plus, comedians Tom Papa and Fortune Feimster hang out with all their comedian friends on What a Joke.
What a Joke is the name of the show?
Weekdays at 10 a.m. East.
I like the name, yeah. What a Joke.
And Are You Still Listening? A monthly Netflix stand-up showcase hosted by Taylor Tomlinson. Tuesdays at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. East. Netflix is a Joke Radio. To hear Netflix is a Joke Radio, activate your radio by calling 844-711-8800.
Or go to SiriusXM.com/go to sign up quickly.
With traditional radio, you could be putting up with 10, 15, even 20 minutes of interruptions every hour. Visit www.SiriusXM.com/go to sign up online quickly and activate your radio. Say goodbye to commutes spent constantly flipping through the dial trying to avoid commercials. And say hello to commercial-free music from nearly every genre, available nationwide. Become a SiriusXM subscriber today. Visit www.SiriusXM.com/go to sign up online quickly or call 844-711-8800 now. Tune in a world of music discovery and tune out annoying commercials.
Ride to the biggest hip-hop hits in the game. On Hip Hop Nation Channel 44. Then go even deeper with exclusive channels in the SXM app. Hear who's next on Hip Hop Nation Discovery. Or hit the gym with Hip Hop Nation Workout. Jump in, them boys under something. For the latest hip-hop, start with Channel 44. Then explore more in the SXM app. To hear this channel, activate your radio now. Call 844-711-8800 or head to SiriusXM.com/go to sign up quickly.
Amazing moments happen so much at SiriusXM. We want you to see them. SiriusXM Video lets you watch some of your favorite SiriusXM shows on the SXM app. Groundbreaking interviews, amazing in-show moments, behind-the-scenes footage, live performances, all come to life in a way you only imagined before. Plus, you can create your own personalized Pandora station based on the artists you love. And hear over 100 extra channels filled with ad-free music for every mood or occasion. Get your first 6 months of our Platinum plan for only $8.33 per month, plus fees and taxes. Just call 844-711-8800 to take advantage of this amazing offer.
Don't miss a second of the men's and women's Sweet 16 on SiriusXM and the SXM app. Hear Westwood One's NCAA tournament coverage on Sirius channels 133 to 136 and XM 201 through 204. Plus, college basketball's winningest coach will preview the matchups on Basketball and Beyond with Coach K.
You're going to fall in love with a team that you never knew before.
Listen Tuesdays and Wednesdays at 5 East on College Sports Radio, Channel 84.
What are you listening to in the morning? Visit www.SiriusXM.com/go to sign up online quickly and activate your radio. Imagine waking up to the biggest names in morning entertainment. Howard Stern, Today Show Radio, news from CNN, Fox News, Bloomberg, NPR, or sports talk on NFL, MLB, NASCAR Radio, and more. Visit www.SiriusXM.com/go to sign up online quickly or call 844-711-8800 now. Activate your radio and begin exploring more than 140 channels.
All the viral songs from TikTok's For You page. Oh, that I made you look. I
All on one Sirius XM channel. The stories behind the trends. Presented by creators like me.
TikTok Radio.
TikTok Radio. Listen now on Channel 4
and the SXM app.
To hear TikTok Radio, activate your radio by calling 844-711-8800 or visit SiriusXM.com. So let's go.
VIP treatment. Unparalleled insider access. Get it all with the SiriusXM Platinum VIP plan. Platinum VIP comes with service in 2 vehicles and a streaming login for each. Don't have a second vehicle? With Platinum VIP, you can still add a second streaming login so you can enjoy SiriusXM anywhere you go. Our VIPs have access to unique benefits, such as opportunities to experience live and virtual SiriusXM events and priority call handling by a VIP customer care team. Add to that VIP perks such as free access to Stitcher Premium podcasts and access to live concert video and audio recordings through nugs.net. Enjoy all the entertainment we've got. It's all included with your Platinum VIP subscription. Become a VIP today. Call 844-711-8800 to learn more. Offer details apply. Not available in Canada.
Quiet your mind, reduce your stress, and rest easy with channels designed to help you fall asleep easier and faster. Slip into the comforting white noise of a storm shower on Rainbow Radio. Fade out to the soothing sounds of the Sleep Channel. Or drift off to nature sounds with forest streams. Find them all in the SXM app, included with all trials and popular plans. Just search Sleep.
Imagine a long road trip where the designated DJ isn't forced to flip from station to station, avoiding commercials and trying desperately to find a signal, where you're not forced to resort to endless rounds of the license plate game to kill time. Stop imagining and start listening to commercial-free music from nearly every genre, coast to coast. Subscribe to SiriusXM, and your music stays with you wherever you hit the interstate or take the back roads. Call 844-711-8800 to activate your radio now.
Are on SiriusXM NBA Radio.
Joined by Zion Williamson of New Orleans Pelicans. If you win, people remember that. People always remember winners. Like Bill Russell had 11 rings. Mike got 6. These are some of the greats. And they all talk about winning. So that's the kind of impact I want to have on the game.
To hear NBA radio, activate your radio by calling 844-711-8800 or visiting SiriusXM.com/go.
SiriusXM. Let's go, come on! Hear every thrilling lap of a worldwide championship chase.
Hamilton couldn't hold it off.
Comprehensive pre- and post-race coverage.
That was the best race I've ever seen.
And a weekly insider look at the F1 circuit every Wednesday on SXM Wheel to Wheel.
There's been plenty going on both on and off track.
The 2023 Formula One season on SiriusXM Channel 81 and the SXM app. To hear Formula One on SiriusXM, activate your radio by calling 844-711-8800 or visiting SiriusXM.com/go.
Sacramento, don't miss Under Oath's Blind Obedience Tour. Special guests Griffey and Rose at Hard Rock Live Sacramento this Thursday. Tickets on sale now at Ticketmaster.com.
Griffin and my vision still better than 2020.
We are so lucky to have Griffin and Reed in our family of advertisers, as they have seen all of us for our vision needs, including LASIK. They have such a skilled and professional team. Now it's your turn to see clearly. You can use your benefit programs, flex dollars, or maybe a healthy tax refund to make LASIK happen.
Several financing options are available for a free evaluation with the doctor in Roseville or Sacramento. Visit LASIKworld.com or call Griffin Reed Eye Care at 485-2020.
It's about the laugh, it's about the giggle, it's about the funny. What's going on, world? Is Kevin Hart celebrating 5 years of Laugh Out Loud Radio. We're celebrating it with amazing shows. I'm talking about Straight from the Heart. I'm talking about Waste House. I'm talking about Gold Mines. And guess what we're doing? We're adding 2 new shows. One of them will be hosted by SNL's Hunky Johnson, and another will be hosted by Southside Diallo Riddle.
It's gonna be insane. I might get fired. Southside?
All this and more on Laugh Out Loud Radio. SiriusXM Channel 96.
Rondo Deportes, bonjour, bitty bitty bitchy. Let's get ready to rumble. All
love to say welcome to the show. Beautiful day in Northern California on a beautiful March the 21st, 2023. And today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. You can buy and test drive your selling Charlton of Big C Sports Center, as well as driving a fleet of Cadillac cars all across the universe. You can follow Big C Sports Podcast on 27 podcast applications: Google, Alexa, Spotify, Spreaker Podcast, Apple Podcast, iHeart-Radio Podcast, Castbox Podcast, Deezer Podcast, Podcast Addict, Podchaser. You can also follow Big C Sports Podcast on GeoSavan out of London, England, as well as India and Africa. You can follow us on Podtail, YouTube, Hubhopper, Stitcher Podcast, Radio Line, Repod Podcast, Luminary Podcast, Listen Notes, Podcast Wise, Podcast Policy, Podcast Bay. Isn't that something? Pod Bay, Podcast Policy, Podcast Republic, and allfeeds.ai, the only one that used to scare me. You can also follow Big C Sports Streaming OTT on 4 TV platforms: Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon and Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV. You won't be able to see how cold it is in Northern California. There's rain. It's like it rains almost every day. It kind of feels like we're in the state of Washington. Up in Seattle, they both start with an S. Sacramento, California, San Francisco, California, Seattle, Washington, always between the Bay and the Valley, all spread level. I really do appreciate that. You can also just keep in mind there's a lot of good sports going on in the world. Got some reparations that gonna be having more news on reparations that I bring to you on Big C Sports Podcast. I love paying homage to our Veterans Crisis Hotline. Man, they're going through it as there's flooding throughout Central California, and just really kind of feel for a lot of people, some smaller evacuations in foothill towns. If you're a veteran going through issues, 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. And if you want to do it, you got to go online, veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net. And give our first responders some praise, because we all need somebody to lean on. And they do a good job helping everybody. Really do appreciate our first responders. I also want to tell you, I love so much about what's going on in the world of sports. Got March Madness. Also some news, NBA basketball, big game in Northern California. Boston Celtics taking on the Sacramento Kings at beautiful Golden One Center. Just finished March Madness. It should be a good game tonight in the capital city. I'll tell you what I also love about Big C Sports Podcast is I produce the show, I direct the topics, I broadcast all the shows, I do all the sound effects based on the platform provided by the agency. We could all use more laughter in our lives. I know I can use more laughter in my life. And then the commercials are done, the stats provided, the storytelling, and then got to get that play-by-play going. Play-by-play, Darren Fox for 3. But I like the original, the way I do the play-by-play. Curry for 3. I was talking to a good old boy today in a store about how much money athletes require or they will not play. And some guys will not even suit up unless you get them $25 million a year. Times have changed in them their heels, if that makes sense to you. And then the show is uploaded to 27 multiple podcast platforms all over the world, and then 4 TV platforms. Never missed a show since creating Big C Sports with the crew back at Salem Media. Really do appreciate that. A lot of things have grown since that time. Also want to say thank you to Xfinity, Comcast TV, and Comcast Spotlight Effect TV for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like in Genesis 1:3. For God said, let there be light. Open your cell phone or electronic device and just say play Big C Sports Podcast. And you see it come up all over the world. Really do appreciate that. And I was working on my Ben Rames, because I know one shining moment. They got to get Ben Rames part of the March Madness in NCAA, because it's always something where there's an upset and people wonder about the upset. You know who's upset? When we talk about reparations and having reparation task force meetings, and then I look at Silicon Valley Bank that was bailed out by the federal government, and supposedly they had so much money in that bank from different kind of investments They only FDIC insurers up to $250,000 per account, but they had, I think, 75% of their money was not insured. But you know, the government came in and bailed them out anyway, and they didn't make them pull themselves up by the bootstrap. Would you like it if you're a gambler and you put your money on some team winning the big game and you lose and the government comes in and they bail you out anyway? That don't happen for gamblers, but it happened for some of the Silicon Valley banks. Now, there are other banks, they just take it over. They don't bail you out and give you money back on those risky investments, but that's what happens. Now, if they can bail out a bank in less than 48 hours, why can't they do reparations and give that some praise in less than 48 hours? If we have more and more commissions, and we got to have more thoughts on what people are saying, and I don't think that's fair. Just do it the way you do the banks. Give them the money because the money's due to them, if that makes sense to you. I want to pay homage to my beautiful family legacy on my beautiful mother's side. My great-grandmother called her mama, a beautiful, loving, kind woman, always making sure lots of love in the family and lots of food in the belly. Really do appreciate her. And then my beautiful great-grandfather called on Pop, former military man and former Negro League baseball player, known around his church buddies as making the best moonshine in the history of the universe. Also saying, boys, get out of that barn. The real MacGyver can fix anything, planes, trains, and automobiles. Really do appreciate Pop. And then my beautiful grandmother called her Mud Dio Seer. She's a beautiful, loving, industrious woman. Can look at a person, tell you a lot about their past, their present, and their future. Really do appreciate her. And it still helps me to this day when I listen. That's the key word, when I listen. Really do appreciate her. And then my beautiful grandfather, Hezekiah, another wonderful person. Just always hardworking, very smart, erudite. And can look at a person, tell you a lot about what's going on in their life. Really do appreciate him. And then I can always depend on my mama, the most beautiful mama in the history of the universe. Started a Head Start program, a food program, and also coached an all-boys Little League baseball team to the championship of the universe. Give mama some praise. Come on, a Head Start program, a food program, and also coached an all-boys Little League baseball team to the championship of the universe. They were always trying to intimidate mama. It was an all-man's league. They would play James Brown. This is a man's world. She'd say, hey, but it would be nothing without a woman or a girl. Hey! Always rising and shining and beat them all in the baseball Little League championship. Always stand, rise, and shine. The best person I ever met in my life. In fact, at the church, everybody wanted Mrs. Curry's cooking. And at the restaurants, everybody wanted Mrs. Curry's cooking. And at home, everybody wanted Mama's cooking. She say, son, how many plates have you had? I say, curry for 3. That's the real curry. And now they use it for a basketball guy. If that makes sense to you. A lot of brothers in my family, if you didn't get to the plate fast, you'd be eating what's between your fingernails, if that makes sense to you. Got to make sure I got to the dinner table in time. I love my mama with all my heart, mind, body, and soul. The best person I ever met in my life. On my father's side, my beautiful grandparents, my granddaddy called him Albert Curry, a former pastor. He had 2 churches in Oakland. He built a 3rd church in Central California. And he also owned 2 gas stations in Oakland, one on Bancroft, the other on Foothill, and they were Shell gas stations. At the same time, he owned 40 acres of land, like the Emancipation Proclamation, where the reparations, oh my God, I just had another epiphany. How did my grandfather own 40 acres of land? Isn't that amazing? Just like the Emancipation Proclamation, where the great Frederick Douglass was working with President Abraham Lincoln to craft the Emancipation Proclamation, where every free black man was supposed to get 40 acres and a mule. And unfortunately, when President Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, President Andrew Johnson, he came along and he vetoed the bill. And he gave the land back to the insurrectionists. Could you imagine you rob a bank like what happened down in Silicon Valley with all these investors? They took risky investments to get rich. And then when the investment didn't pay out, the government bailed them out anyway. Primarily in a very dominant, highly white populated part of the country, Silicon Valley. I wonder if they do that for the Black Wall Street where banks were burned down. They never repopulated those banks with money, did they? No, they didn't. You could Google it. All called the Black Wall Street. When those were burned down and torn down by some good old boys, the government never came in and bailed those black people out. You can Google that. They never bailed them out. Not once. Not 2. Not 3. Not 4. Not once. But Silicon Valley Bank, they got bailed out for risky investments. They didn't do that for the Black Wall Street. Reparations do reparations now, reparations forever. And some things are just right in your face. Right in your face, really do appreciate that. And then I think about it, you think about all the things that have been bequeathed to a generation where their ancestry stole it. And that was robbed from Black Americans. And just asking the government to treat Black Americans and descendants of chattel slavery the same way you treated those what they call yuppies down in Silicon Valley, primarily Caucasians, when they hedged their bets on trying to do risky investments and all kind of cryptocurrencies. No, they bailed them out. Bailed them out. So what we're asking is not too much to ask. Just treat us the same way you treated the people down there in the Silicon Valley called yuppies, if that makes sense to you. Really do appreciate my grandfather. And then my beautiful grandmother, Alberta Curry, working side by side with my beautiful grandfather with the 2 churches in Oakland, building the 3rd church in Central California, and also running the 2 gas stations in Oakland on Bancroft and Foothill. I was walking down our hallway when I was 8 years old. I was looking for my bailout in 10 cookies. And she touched me on my forehead, and she said, "There's something about your voice. I love hearing you speak." And now Big C Sports Podcast is syndicated on 27 podcast applications all across the universe and 4 TV platforms. Get that some praise. Come on, she sold into me. She didn't sew from me, if that makes sense to you. Really do appreciate her. And then my beautiful father, former United States Air Force fighter pilot, chief mechanic, always making sure that airplanes can fly high so we can all stay safe at night. In fact, my father always said, develop your mind to its highest extent. In the Air Force, my father's roommate was the late Al Freeman Jr., who played the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in one of my favorite movies, Malcolm X, that was written and produced by the great Spike Lee, and then acted by my favorite actor, the great Denzel Washington. And I love the scene where Denzel said, "King Kong ain't got nothing on reparations." That's the part I saw. that makes sense to you. Really do appreciate that movie. And then, I'm telling you, my dad, the first one to tell me about the SR-71, the Blackbird, can fly from the East Coast to the West Coast. Actually, LA to DC, in about 1 hour and 8 minutes. That's amazing. The fastest plane we've ever had outside of a space shuttle. And I think the temperature on that thing would get 6,000 degrees on the outside because of us flying so high, if that makes sense to you. Really do appreciate my dad. Love him with all my heart, mind, body, and soul. And then my beautiful brother Todd, with that bombastic voice, sound like thunder and lightning when Todd would speak. Always saying go forward. In fact, one of our top voracious readers, my goodness, really do appreciate Todd. And we talked about sports and politics all the time. And one of the scenes that came to mind is Vin Rames in the movie Pulp Fiction. And Vin Rames, he told Bruce Willis before the big fight, he said, "Your butt goes down in the future." Let me do Vin Rames. Let me do some gestures. He said, "Your butt goes down in the 5th round." He said, "Say that, please." I said, "Okay, my butt goes down in the 5th round." And Vin Rames told Bruce Willis, he said, "That stinging sensation you're feeling, well, that's just pride fucking with you." And he told him what a lot of March Madness coaches and players are telling the opponent. Fuck pride. I love that because pride, he said, pride, it only hurts. It never helps. And he said, a lot of you unrealistic fighters, you know, what he said, boxing field with a lot of unrealistic blibbity blibber. You think your butt gets better with time like wine, but it don't. If you were going to be champion, you would have already been the champion, but you're not. So take this money and that stinging sensation and go to the bank. And if you lose your money, the government will bail you out. If that makes sense to you. Buy all the Bitcoin you can, but they won't get the reparations yet. Isn't that something? The Silicon Valley Bank, FDIC insures a $250,000 account. They said about 75% of the money in that bank was not insured. They had more money than they knew what to do with it. And a lot of that came from cryptos that has no federal protection. But that Silicon Valley is predominantly white. And the white government, they rode in there, and what they say, Ringling Brothers and brought on baby circus, and they gave them the reparations real fast. Because they didn't want them to lose out. You look at the Black Wall Street that's happened all over this country, they didn't bail out the black banks. They didn't bail them out. In fact, a lot of them, they were told, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. They told, this is the truth. There's a project called the Black Wall Street. And Reverend Tony Pierce, the CEO of it for economic empowerment, justice, and equality for all, out of Beverly Hills, California, black men. They didn't bail out the Black Wall Street, the banks that were burned down in the black communities. But the white banks down here in Silicon Valley, they built them out overnight. What, 48 hours? Pretty close to overnight. I wish they would just treat black Americans the same. You gotta give that some praise. They live equal liberty and justice for all, but it didn't happen. Love all the things Cotton I talked about. Then my beautiful daughter, Daisy, the most beautiful daughter in the history of the universe. College graduate, 2 degrees with honors in 3.5 years. Very smart every day. A smart girl, as I always tell you, never let anyone come between you and your family. Always praise God. Isaiah 54:17, that no weapon formed against you will prosper. In fact, Daisy is the first one. She set up the very first interview for Big C Sports and back at Salem Media, and it was a high school football player. We went on from there to become the first time in the history of the United States that NFL Monday Night Football started broadcasting live on the Wall Street Business Network. That's a financial news network. You know, like the financial networks that just got bailed out when the banks failed. Government took over. They didn't take over the Black Wall Street and give those black depositors their money back, did they? Why not? Why not? Because they can still do right, if that makes sense to you. Reparations now, reparations forever. Daisy, actually, just a very smart, beautiful woman, actually helped me set up in college coaches to come to the West Coast and do work with Big C Sports. I love you with all my heart, mind, body, and soul. Never let anyone come between you and God. Always trust God, and you just always trust God, and you can be anything you want to be in life. And then my beautiful son, Malcolm, the most handsome son in the history of the universe. Very smart, erudite, a good man, a college student. Malcolm's very smart, hardworking. Really do appreciate your son. In fact, Malcolm, one time he helped me save trees. I used to always get the newspapers and turn in pages looking for stats on players and teams. And one day Malcolm said, Dad, he said, why don't you just Google it? And a light bulb went off. I've been Googling ever since, and now on 27 podcast platforms and also 4 TV platforms all over the universe. You can be anything you want, Malcolm. Isaiah 54:17. No weapon formed against you shall prosper. Always trust God. You can be anything you want to be. I love you with all my heart, mind, body, and soul. And then Big C, with all that wealth of knowledge over the years, just like my granddaddy coming out of that church, always saying, you got to believe, you got to believe, you got to believe. Let's get ready to rumble. I love saying welcome to the show. Yes, we nominated Big C Sports Podcast. I'm telling you, I love what I do with this show. I have no scripts. I have no 3-way teleprompters. No producer in my ear. I do my show fresh. The best I can, the best I know how. And I love doing it. I really do appreciate everything that's going on with the platform. But I also want to get into something that's important because Big C Sports also will be a part of that. It's called the Pan-African Global Trade and Investment, International Sports Investment Trade Development. Been invited to a lot of different opportunities with Big C Sports Podcast. It's the 11th annual Pan-African Global Trade and Investment Conference. It's amazing how many things are happening. It's with the collaboration with the Center for African Peace and Conflict Resolution to develop and present strategic and sustainable approaches for conflict resolution in fragile conflict affected countries. There's a lot of good things happening with Brother Aleem Sabaz. Really do appreciate him. Just a very smart man, a salient man, and constantly letting me know of things that are going on in the black diaspora. The conference is going to promote and support the use of trade, investment, and economic development for conflict resolution programs that promote and facilitate the acquisition of conflict management and resolution skills through a collaborative effort of local and credible NGOs to promote and provide strategies for inclusion of marginalized groups in trade, investment, and local economic development, promote the establishment and operation of peace-building strategies and institutions that establish and maintain successful conflict resolution, training, and behavior modification programs, establish regional transformation based upon modern methods of social and economic development, develop trade, investment, and economic development networks, which can immediately be relied on to increase peace and sustainability, establish a small business cooperative that works toward the accomplishment of the regional master's plan for trade, investment, and local economic development. That's so important It's so important that I think more people, especially what we just saw happen in Silicon Valley, I want to make sure that I'm a part of that too, and I want to give that some praise. Oftentimes, people just want to know who won a game. Anyone can just see who won a game by reading the scores. But when you're getting to the point where you're trying to be a difference in society, that's what I love. Everybody has whatever problem they have in life, but to come up with solutions and to invite other people and to be invited to be a part of it. I think when you think about trading away from conflict, using trade to increase resilience in fragile states, to move beyond the glass ceiling in U.S. markets, Black-owned and operated businesses must consider that 95% of their potential new customers base can be found in international markets. Africa has 7 of the fastest growing economies in the world, with the youngest workforce and a median age of 17 years old. Africa is rich in minerals, natural resources, has 80% of the world's arable land for agriculture. Forging trade relationships with Africa makes sense, and they are welcoming people to the table. There are 55 countries on the continent of Africa where there are opportunities in every imaginable industry, and they have natural resources and have the talent, experience, and investments to make an impact on the economy and the lives of millions of continental Africans and Africans in the diaspora. So whether it's products and services or global trading with Africa should be an option for your companies for growth and expansion. And keep this in mind, corporate America. By 2050, 1 in every 4 people in the world will be in Africa. That's offering a massive consumer business market. And I love the fact that Big C Sports Podcast is able to talk about that. And we'll have I just love being able to promote that. No other sports program in the country. In fact, let me say it the way I normally say it. No other sports program in the universe is promoting that. Give Big C Sports some praise. I'm just grateful for a lot of things. I want to also touch on, again, the Pan-African Global Trade and Investment, International Sports Investments, Trade Development. I love bringing that to you with Big C Sports Podcast. I'm going to touch on a few more things that are happening because that's reparations based. It's about opportunity. The Black Wall Street banks were not bailed out. Silicon Valley, it got bailed out. What's the difference? Also, Big C Sports Podcast for April 6, 2023, International Sports Day. From co-founder of Crescent Sports Media, Mr. Aleem Shabazz. Really do appreciate that. Big C will also be a part of that. I just love talking about reparations and March Madness because it's madness not to think about reparations for Black Americans. I know people want to see us in uniforms going, touchdown, home run, 3-point play. Oh, man, Woody, he's going all the way. I saw Jesse Jackson, Mr. October. He was on a sports program this morning being interviewed by Michael Strahan. 2 Hall of Famers, Michael Strahan, a football champion, and then Reggie Jackson, a baseball champion. But what he talked about, I think Reggie's only about 75 years old. I remember seeing him Mr. October when he played in Oakland and also New York. And he talked about the times where segregation, it had an effect on him even as a professional ball player. And how it's amazing how society has had a lot of issues just treating people fair. And we would think about Lyndon Baines Johnson, the 1964 civil rights legislation that made opportunities for African Americans supposedly equal. But the Black banks never got bailed out. The Black Wall Streets that were burned down. Those communities, people were murdered. Silicon Valley, they just lost some money mostly on crypto. And the government came in and bailed them out. They didn't say pull yourself up by your bootstrap. They didn't have 19 conferences to see how they would give people the money back that they hedged their bets on risky investments. And the same thing now, I want to make sure that Big C Sports is not just another talking head yelling at somebody about who's bigger, stronger, and faster. So to see Mr. October, Reggie Jackson, talk about some of the things he had to go through, and he was still great. And I want to give greatness some praise. I love giving it praise. We all need that. I love being a part of Big C Sports Podcast and talking about things that make a lot of sense. And so congratulations to Mr. October. He's still doing his thing and being a help to people. And that to me is important. I want to touch a little bit on some NBA basketball. because as we know, NBA basketball is fantastic. Teams right now are winding down to get their spot into, oh my goodness, into the playoff position. We have March Madness going on right now, the billion-dollar business. Mostly black kids, about 80% of the kids are black, get no money for it, and about 95% of the coaches are white. They get paid, and the administrators and all the presidents of the schools, they get paid too. And we got to change that. The Black Wall Street, those banks should have been bailed out too when their communities were burned down. Whole communities were destroyed. No government came in and bailed them out. You hear about bank bailouts all the time now. We got to make that fair. If that makes sense to you, at least give that some thought. Give that some thought and give that some praise. That's to me, it's just amazing how things go. I want to give that some praise again. So when you think about March Madness, I love the way NBA is played. I love the way March Madness is played, and with the men and women. And thinking about March Madness for the men's side, with the NCAA having 68 teams to start, it's now down to Sweet 16. And with all the people that withstood the opportunities, it's just a matter of how you play going down the stretch. And because AAU has made it is even the playing field for a lot of these programs, smaller programs like FAU, they can keep advancing, while programs like Purdue and Kentucky, they're at home. And they can't get to the big dance. But the Sweet 16, remaining in the bracket, just 2 wins away from reaching the Final Four. I still have UCLA as my team to cut down the nets down in Texas. But if I think about some of the familiar names, programs like UCLA, like Houston, like Gonzaga, like Arkansas, and you have Princeton, and then Florida Atlantic University, it marks uncharted territory. And you think about what the Blue Buds, they're no longer the dominant programs anymore because of AAU competition. A lot of kids play that year-round. So there's no guarantees that you're going to be a championship team just because you come from a championship history like a Purdue and like a Kansas. And what I love, the fact that if you look at what happened so far in the first weekend, number 15 and number 16 seeds, they were able to win. If you're a 15 and 16 seed, you're playing a number 1 or a number 2 seed. And games that were dominant, like number 1 seed Kansas and number 1 seed Purdue, they're at home. So it's probably smart to expect the unexpected this week. Will we even see one team that's a number 1 seed get to the Final Four? Think about that. We're down to Houston and Alabama for that. But just 4 teams will be left standing by Sunday. By the end of Sunday. As the big dance, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And then we'll start looking at national championship contenders. And that, to me, is just amazing. I'll get into these games more, but we got coming up from Las Vegas, Nevada. Got number 4, UConn. That's going to be Thursday in Las Vegas. Versus number 8, Arkansas. And when you look at the Huskies, UConn can beat opponents in a variety of ways. You have Jordan Hawkins. He's a dominant player, and you have Alex Caraban, Joey Calcaterra. They're excellent 3-point shooters, and they get plenty of looks too. But also, when you think about the Arkansas Razorbacks, they were not supposed to be here. They're number 8 seed. Arkansas dropped 4 of its last 5 games entering the NCAA tournament before the coach took his shirt off, and he could put his shirt back on if that makes sense to you. But they had a stunner in taking down the reigning champion Kansas last weekend. Now Kansas had a young team, so I don't really call that a stunner, but Kansas was ranked higher, obviously, number 1 seed. But the Razorbacks, they're a terrible 3-point shooting team. But they make up for it with their defense, like Nolan Richardson back in the day. I think he called it 40 minutes of hell. But the Razorbacks won a national championship under Nolan Richardson. This Arkansas team is not as good, but they're good. So teams turn the basketball over 14 times per game against the Razorbacks. And they have 5 players averaging double figures. So you look at Coach Eric Musselman. He's been a coach for the Sacramento Kings, University of Nevada, and now he's down there in Arkansas. So that team, they can turn you over. If you're a defense, you can turn teams over. That gives you a good chance to win those games. Now, the team that I like, if they're healthy, I like UCLA. They're a number 2 seed because they lost the Pac-12 championship to Arizona. But doesn't matter. Arizona got knocked out in the first game by Princeton. But UCLA, a number 2 seed, and Gonzaga, a number 3 seed. They've been the premier teams on the West Coast the last decade, it seems. But when you scout the Bruins, UCLA, and this is why I pick them, they have the best pair of veteran leaders in the Sweet 16 in the form of senior point guard Tyler Campbell. They call him Tiger like Tiger Woods, spelled differently, but Tiger Campbell. And senior forward Jaime Jaquez Jr. And the two lead the Bruins in scoring, and they've been through some battles during their careers. This is like the days of Kareem when he played at UCLA, Lou Alcindor, and the days of Walton when he played down there, Reggie Miller. They always had great players, the Banyan brothers. But the Bruins, they're reliant upon 2-pointers in an era that prioritizes 3-pointers. But Jaquez knows how to find good looks, and the Bruins have evolved into one of the nation's top defensive squads over the course of the season. That's what I like about UCLA, and they've been there before. It's nothing new. Even the days of when Kevin Love was down there for UCLA and they ran up against Florida, and Florida had a great team. The experience, I think, carries UCLA to the Final Four. At the same time, you got to look at the Gonzaga Bulldogs. And Gonzaga's led by a familiar face also, Drew Timme, as a senior forward. He tops the roster in points and rebounding. But the Zags have multiple offensive weapons also. And they have Julian Strawther, a dynamic playmaker on the wing, who's dramatically improved his three-point shooting this season. And then forward Anton Watson, come off the bench strong as of late. The Zags are a bit difficult to find out how you handle them at times on defense because they lack the elite rim protection that they enjoyed last season with Chet Holmgren on the roster. But they've been keeping up. The Zags have been doing a good job not turning the ball over as much. I think UCLA's defense will force them into turnovers, and UCLA is probably going to win that by 2 possessions, in my opinion, because they're just more battle-tested, and they have better scorers and a better defense for UCLA, the Bruins, and that's my opinion. And even the pollsters had UCLA favored as a number 1 seed until they got upset by Arizona. But I think that took a little pressure off of UCLA, and they were missing some of the big guys too. But I think they're going to be okay because they have the experience of being here before and not letting that get away from them this time. That's my opinion. In the East region, also on Thursday at Madison Square Garden in New York City, you have number 4 seed Tennessee versus number 9 seed FAU Florida Atlantic University. And Tennessee is a grown man basketball. Their identity is found on the defensive end of the floor, a lot like UCLA. The Volunteers have, I'm telling you, they're good. They have ranked as the nation's top defensive squad for most of the season. They're a very solid defensive stopper, and they lift weights. You can see they get into the weight rooms. Now, opponents are averaging just about 57 points per game against this physical team, which imposes its will with a rotation of 4 bigs who are not afraid to pick up some fouls while trying to swat your shot away. Offensively, I think they do a very good job getting the ball into the paint. But just something about that team, I don't know if they're quite ready yet to cut down the nets. I think they beat Florida Atlantic University, but I think it stops after that, if that's my opinion. Now, for a team that should not even be here in the eyes of many pundits, and that's Florida Atlantic, they're a number 9 seed, and they're a great three-point shooting team, and that's why they're here. They're not going to beat you down in the paint, and they're not going to beat Tennessee down in the paint. They're a great three-point shooting team, which gives them a chance. But I saw when Michigan State took down Marquette was also a great three-point shooting team, but Michigan State was more physical, the same way I think that Tennessee is more physical than FAU, and I think they're going to hurt them overall. Now, the Owls, they like to play fast, but they also defend. Most important about this team, they're deep. They're among the nation's leaders in bench minutes, and no one averages more than 26 minutes per game. So that helps them try to stay fresh, if that makes sense to you. And I just think Tennessee's too big, and it's going to show in the second half, if that makes sense to you. I got number 3 seed Kansas State versus number 7 Michigan State. That might be the best game of the weekend coming up. And I'll tell you why. When you look at the Wildcats, Kansas State's heartbeat is a 5'8" point guard and Marquise Noel. He's the team's second leading scorer, and he led the Big 12 in both assists and steals this season. And they have a guy by the name Keontae Johnson, makes it quite a combo, as Johnson is a dynamic and physical player. He's capable of scoring at all 3 levels. The Wildcats are not a great three-point shooting team. That's going to cost them against Michigan State. That's just my opinion. They force 18 turnovers per game, so there are plenty fast break opportunities for them. But when I look at the side of what I think might be the difference in this game, I know Jerome Tang, he's a steady presence and National Coach of the Year candidate. Been a remarkable turnaround for them. But they're up against a different breed of Spartan, if that makes sense to you. When you look at Michigan State, the 2 leading scorers, Tyson Walker and Joey Hauser, they shoot better than 40% from beyond the arc. That's Steph Curry territory. For a team that's one of the best in the country in terms of outside shooting, and the Spartans showed in a second round victory over number 2 seed Marquette, they can win when their outside shots are not falling because they're also physical. And they're locked on defensively. Michigan State made only 2 of 16 long-range shots in that game, but they still won by 9. And they could have won more because the last rebound had about 5 seconds left and they just ran it out. And they only hit 2 3-point shots. And they still won by 9? Really should have won by 11? They forced 16 turnovers. That's what Kansas State has to be careful of. And they won the battle of second chance points 15-8. Now, Walker and Hauser are the type of veterans you want this time of year. And I think the legendary coach Tom Izzo is among the best and March Madness of all time. He really is. He chews out everybody. He's chewing out the referees. He's chewing out his players. And sometimes he's even chewed out his assistant coaches. But he wants to make sure they get it, if that makes sense to you. You want to make sure they get it. And that's what he's trying to do. And I think Michigan State will advance because of that. I got number 1 seed in Kansas City, Houston Cougars, and number 5, the Miami Hurricanes. I remember Miami played Houston in a football game. It was back in the 80s. And I think the score was 40-7. I think Andre Rison was the quarterback for the Houston Cougars back then. And Miami's was just too fast for them. But not so fast, my friend. It might be a reversal of stories this time. When you look at the questions that surround the health of star guard Marcus Sasser entering the NCAA tournament, but he answered them resoundingly in his second-round victory over Auburn. They had to come from behind to knock off Auburn, Charles Barkley's favorite school, by scoring 22 points, 7 of 14 shooting. The Cougars outscored Auburn 50-23 in the second half of that game, and they came roaring back from a 10-point deficit, and it demonstrates just how incredibly talented they are. And when they're at their best, this team ranks in the top 10 of almost every stat you can think about in college basketball. They don't have a lot of flaws, and I really like this kid Sasser. He's a star. But 5 players average double figures for that squad. If Houston gets rolling, Houston, we have liftoff, and I think they'll have liftoff against the Miami Hurricanes. The only thing that can stop the launch of Houston is a hurricane. They don't like to launch the space shuttle in a hurricane. I think they'll beat Miami pretty soundly in this game. When I look at the Hurricanes, Miami's undersized. They don't tend to mind that, but the Hurricanes have elite guards and dynamic small ball and big men. But I think at the same time, Norchad Almir, who is 6'7", but rebounds like he's Dennis Rodman, he's among the group of 4 Miami players averaging 13 or more points per game. Isaiah Wong is a leading scorer and a familiar face in his 4th season as a key player for the Canes. George Miller is also a stud. I just think they're in over their head against those Cougars because when they get it rolling, they're hard to stop. I got number 2, Texas versus number 3, Xavier. When you scout the Longhorns, they rank as number 6 nationally in Division I experience according to a lot of college stats out there. And the Longhorns rank among the nation's best teams at avoiding turnovers and barely missed a beat after midseason firing of Coach Chris Beard. Then combo guard of Marcus Carr. He leads the team in scoring. But Texas, they have a lot of weapons and a deep bench and 5 players averaging 9 or more points per game for a squad that seems impossible to fluster. They don't have the great shooters like when Kevin Durant was there back in the day, but this team gets a lot of guys involved, and I really like the way they play. I think it's going to be a tough night for the Musketeers, but when you look at the Musketeers, offense is what Xavier does best, and they like to play fast. That may not help them against Texas because Texas is very fast, but I think they're one of the top 3-point shooting teams in the country because of excellent perimeter threat and Soli Boom and Adam Kunko. But the Musketeers can beat you in a variety of ways, even amid the losses of key forward Zach Fremantle. And Xavier's going to have a hard time against Texas, though. They don't, in my opinion, they don't match up as well against Texas. And maybe even the basketball pundits see that. But they're a number 2, 3 seed. If they're going to win, it's because they're going to lock down on the 3-point baskets. But at the same time, Texas plays good defense. I think Sean Miller's first season back with the program, he's got his team 1 win away from returning to the Elite Eight for the first time since 2008, which was his 4th year of his first 5-year run as a coach. I think Texas wins that game unless Xavier goes crazy from 3. I think that's the only chance. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking with it. And I think Texas has enough athleticism that even if Xavier gets off to a great game shooting threes, I still don't think they have what it takes to get that victory. And that's my opinion. Could be wrong about that. I like Texas in that game. Number 1, Alabama. Is this football? Alabama, great football program. Alabama, great basketball program. I even hear they play good baseball. Number 1 seed Alabama versus number 5 seed San Diego State. Now, San Diego State, they've been carrying the mantle for the Mountain West Conference. They're a big physical team. It would not be, in my opinion, an upset if they beat Alabama. I know Alabama, I think they lost 2 games last year, regular season, and playoffs combined. They lost to Stanford and UCLA by combined 28 points. Well, San Diego State plays that same kind of ball that UCLA plays. So scouting the Crimson Tide, Alabama is the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament this year for a reason. They're very deep rotation. They have some elite athletes, including a handful of NBA prospects, but they do have a little cloud over their head, and I won't get into that if that makes sense to you. But the Crimson Tide, they're excellent on both ends. They score 82 points per game. They average 10 3-pointers per game. You're going to throw in 30 points to what they already have. They also rank 3rd defensively. And that's down in the SEC, where they're playing the Tennessees and the Arkansas and the Kentuckys of the world. Now they have freshman forward Brandon Miller and Nora Clowney. They're both likely first-round NBA draft picks. But this team is also veteran guard heavy, such as Mark Sears and Javon Quinley. I'm telling you, they have a lot of leadership. They have a lot of experience. They were also picked last year to go far, but they ran into a UCLA program that put some defense on them, and Alabama wilted in the pressure. I don't know if the San Diego State Aztecs have that kind of pressure, and last I checked, Kawhi Leonard is no longer playing for that program. However, if you look at the Aztecs, don't take them for granted. San Diego State, they hang his hat on this defense. And the Aztecs are holding opponents to only 63 points per game. That's 20 points per game less than what Alabama normally scores. So something's got to give. And they limit teams to just 28% from 3. They prefer to play a slow-paced game, and they're excellent at forcing opponents to play slow. Now, they have a physical guard in Matt Bradley. He's the only San Diego State player who averages double figures. And that's not an attractive offensive team, but they remind me kind of like Princeton, a lot like Gonzaga. The Aztecs are fully bought into the imposing style that 6-year coach Brian Dutcher that he prefers as they make their first Sweet 16 appearance since 2014. If they're going to beat Alabama, they got to watch what UCLA did to them last year. You put a defense on them, and they like to get up and down the court, but if you slow the game down, you got a chance. And that's all what they say in Dumb and Dumber, all they wanted was a chance. I think that's what they said in Dumb and Dumber, Jim Carrey. So I've still got Alabama. I think they're a little bit too athletic for San Diego State. But that's why they play the game. You play to win the game. I got number 6 Creighton versus number 15 Princeton. Why is Princeton even here? Because they won the 2 games against Arizona and Missouri. When you look at the Blue Jays, Creighton's excellent defense centers around 7-foot rim protector Ryan Kalmbrenner, who makes scoring inside for his opponents very difficult. He's so willing to get you, like he has that Dennis Rodman attitude. But I don't know how to pick this game. Creighton and Princeton, neither team's supposed to be here. I'm more intrigued. I saw Princeton when they came out to Golden One Center, Northern California. Princeton's turned into a defensive juggernaut. They really slowed the game down. In the opening weekend of the NCAA tournament, they held Arizona to 27 points below its average. They held Missouri to 16 points below its average. The Tigers also rebound like piranhas, and they limit a lot of second chance points. If the Tigers continue to defend like they did last weekend, they would be a tough out. Offensively, the players to watch are Tosan Eva Bowman, a versatile forward, Ryan Langbro. 6.2 attempts per game from 3-point range. It's about a defensive, it has to be a defensive dominated game by Princeton. It may be the most boring game to watch, but either team, they weren't supposed to be here. So they wrote the Cinderella story and give Cinderella some praise. We all want to see Cinderella put on the glass slipper, but that's my story, and I'm sticking with it. And you never know. You just never know. So I love talking about that with March Madness. I also want to tell everyone there's a website called Powernomics.com. Dr. Claude Anderson has some excellent tips for financial literacy as we look at United States reparations versus March Madness. Reparations will start first in California, and you'd be mad not to do it. The Silicon Valley Bank was bailed out overnight. The banks that were burned down through the Black Wall Street, they were never bailed out by our government. FDIC insured up to $250,000 per account. 75% of that money in Silicon Valley Bank, it was not backed by the FDIC. A lot of that money was Bitcoin money and investment money where people took risks. And when you take risks, you can win big or you can lose big. And when they lost their buds because of bad management, the government bailed them out. In San Francisco, San Francisco's been having hearings on reparations for descendants of chattel slavery, freedmen, known as Black Americans, from the Emancipation Proclamation. And we're still having meetings and task force. And some knuckleheads said they don't need reparations. They need new centers so people can play basketball and checkers. What a joke. I think his name is Reverend Amos Brown. He doesn't need to be part of any task force. Put him in Silicon Valley Bank. He would have said, no, they don't need money. They don't need money. Build them a library. No, those people at Silicon Valley Bank wanted their money. Black folks deserve their reparations also. Gotta happen. It's gonna happen. You just gotta get the right people behind it. And I love, as Big C Sports Podcast, I will talk about it all the time because it's important. The U.S. Senate, 1862, the Homestead Act was just for white people. Over 276 million acres of land given to white Americans and white Europeans to develop the United States in the West Coast, west of the Mississippi. But you couldn't be black to get the money. It was the people who worked this land for free from 1619 to 1865. Black people deserve reparations. Descendants of chattel slavery. You got to get that praise. Quit shucking and jiving. Treat Black Americans the same way you treated Silicon Valley Bank depositors who had money from investments. Investments go up, they go down. But the Black Wall Street was never rebuilt. When that was burned down, rebuild it. Put money back into it. Quit saying pull yourself up by your bootstraps. They then tell that to the yuppies down in Silicon Valley. Oh, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. They didn't do that. President Biden came in there with the swipe of a pen and said, give them their money back. Do that for Black Americans too. That's who put you in office. That's my story and I'm sticking with it. Well, as I always tell you, It's raining in Dendere Hills. If you're gonna drink, don't drive. If you're gonna drive, don't drink. Because mothers against drunk drivers are mad, and fathers against drunk drivers are mad. It's one of the easiest things not to do. Call Uber, call Lyft, take away the keys, call a friend, sleep it off, but just don't do it. There was a fatality up in Northern California right around the holidays. Some guys were out golfing, some real estate guys were out golfing. They were drinking and driving and then racing the car in the rain. Spun out of control, hit a tree. The car exploded. Just like that, 4 fatalities. The wife of the driver wants to sue the restaurant that was serving them liquor. A lot of guys have their own liquor on them. It's not the restaurant's fault. Sue the person that got behind the wheel of a car drunk and was racing the car in the rain. Unfortunately, he lost his life. And even more egregious, 3 passengers lost their lives too. Yet the wife of the driver wants to sue the restaurant. So does that mean the other wives should sue her and her estate? Because her husband was the one driving that led to 4 fatalities? You blame the person that told you it's okay to drink and drive. Not the restaurant. They thought you had common sense to get Uber or Lyft. They didn't know you were dumb enough to drink and drive and race your car in the rain. It's just a lesson for everybody. Don't do it. Well, that's my story, and I'm sticking with it. Well, back in the day, there's a man known by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man. And he would always tell Ali, you float like a butterfly, you sting like a bee, rumble, young man, rumble. He said, with all you've got to use, how can you lose? Ali said, I'm so pretty, I can't possibly be beat because all these big sea burgers make me light on my feet. That's why I float like a butterfly and I sting like a bee. My beautiful mother always says there's never ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, pick up the phone and ask for help. Call 911 because things change when the police show up. And as I always tell you, on every Big C Sports Show, I thank you, I appreciate you, and I hope that you have a super fantastic day. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. The great Jesse Jackson. Keep hope alive. Reparations now. Reparations forever. Reparations now. Reparations forever. Reparations now. Reparations